Contact. That is our target.
I was invited down to Canberra, where Australia has its Institute of Sport, because a very bright young rheumatologist was not getting through his exams because he was failing the immunology bit, as were everyone else. And so he said, look, come down, we'll pay you airfare, give you a decent meal, but give us a couple of days teaching. So I went down, we became friends. And later he ended up becoming the director of the Institute of Sport. Now, most of the swimmers in Australia go through and become part of the Institute of Sport. It's a very, very good organisation. And they had one guy who had been number 1 or 2 in the world in butterfly. And suddenly he was number 10 to 15. And when they did some investigations on him, they found that his immune system had actually dropped. And it was very confusing. So because I had the linkage and I knew the guys there, they said, look, could I come down and see this chap? Now, at the same time, an American group had found that people running marathons were getting quite sick and fatigued and dropping their mucosal immune system, that same immune system that's protecting you against COVID. And they were dropping their immunity and getting infections and getting sick, and they didn't understand why. And I just read this literally a month before. So I set up a program with the Institute of Sport, which actually went on for 5 or 6 years. I'll give credit entirely to my once PhD student, Professor Marie Gleason, who religiously followed this project right through. And it was very important, very exciting, because what we did is we followed the swimmers that were coming in for the training before an important meet. And we didn't want to take blood from them, and we're mucosal immunologists, so we took saliva just out of their mouth. And we found that some of these athletes had quite low levels of the antibody, which is specifically found in secretions called IgA. And the IgA antibody was low. So we followed these guys and girls, and we found that the ones who get what's called overtraining syndrome, this is a performance impairment, were actually getting a form of very mild transient form of chronic fatigue syndrome. And they were getting quite sick. All they had to do is drop their time by a fraction of a second and put them out of the finals. And that, of course, was devastating for a young professional athlete, as you would well know. We then started looking at two things. We looked at why is this happening, and we looked at what can we do about it. And the why was that genetically, these people were linked to chronic fatigue syndrome, which occurs in 1% of the population. But they weren't, no one ever is going to call someone who's coming, the second fastest swimmer in the world, as some of they were, chronic fatigue syndrome. But they were at risk of decompensating and going through that period. And so what we did is we looked at their training program. And as you well know, the athletes talk about their training in terms of training volume. And the volume essentially, in simple terms, is the intensity by the duration. And we found it was the intensity of the training that actually most predisposed these people to the overtraining syndrome. And if we kept the volume the same by extending the period but reducing the intensity, the IgA level, we were monitoring. There was one guy who had won it was the 96 Olympics. He won the kayaking, not the rough white water kayaking, the racing kayak. He was the world champion, a terrific guy. And he was also the local TV announcer. Nice. And so he could afford to pay my fare up to come up to Brisbane. Nice. So what we did, we put a program together where we actually worked with his physiologist and we monitored weekly his levels of IgA, and we tailored his training. And this guy never thought he'd get back into the 2000 Olympics, because it was the time we were doing this 20 years ago. And not only did he got back in, he won the Australian again because we were able to modulate his training so he didn't get impaired effect. So the way in which we managed it was by working with the trainers and working with the coaches and changing the pattern of coaching. And in the 2000 Olympics where our swimmers did extremely well. Every swimmer swam to their predicted best, which was unheard of, every one of them. Now, prior to that, in the 2 years before, in the Commonwealth Games, which Australia, England, and all the lesser countries participate in, we actually looked at what was happening. We found that when they drop their immunity with overtraining, it allows the Epstein-Barr virus, which is contained within the cell by T lymphocytes. These are immune cells which operate directly to shore up the protection capacity of the infected cell in the throat. So it doesn't become a problem. Now, if you drop that, then the virus can get out and cause a mini, you call it infectious mono over here, I think. They don't actually get fevers, and they might get a bit of a sore throat. But from their point of view, their performance gets impaired.
Sure.
And so what we did this is before we really had got the training programs right. We actually treated, it was all went through ethics committees, with a very powerful anti-Epstein-Barr virus. And we prevented the emergence of the Epstein-Barr virus by pre-treating them before the actual performance in the game.